Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited that this is the very first episode of the Vanessa Podcast. Some of you may have joined from the After Work Drink Club community, which was actually the title of my previous podcast that I launched in 2021. So if you are new here, a warm welcome. It has taken me some time to really think about my direction in this podcast industry. And if I'm honest with you, I haven't been as consistent in this space as I would have liked. I got distracted by running two businesses and, life in general. However, podcasting and content creation is really my true passion and purpose. And I am so committed to showing up every week on this platform. So to start, every Monday, I'll be gracing your screens or ears with my 30-minute weekly rundown on what's happening in the world of business, culture, and the economy. And I'm going to break it down for us in terms of what does this mean. Then from next month, I'm going to introduce a midweek interview with some special guests. So these are people where we will get their take on what's happening in the world, their careers, and how they've got to where they are, and how all of us can too as well. But right now, I'm so excited to be with you all. Make sure, though, before I kick off, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and the like button too. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps other people find us. Okay, so what have I been up to in the past 5 years? So I've been through a roller coaster ride in business. So I started a second business in 2023 called the Hill app. And off the back of that, I obviously built an app, which is on the Apple stores and Google Play stores right now. And I'm trying to now think about how I can scale my community and grow my business. It's not the best time to run a business for any industry, just because of the madness that is happening in the US right now. I think it's crazy when you think about it, right? Like, how can one man screw billions of people around the world? And I'm navigating all of this and I'm thinking about what direction do I want to go? So I've got a milestone birthday coming up and I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I want to do with my life. It's been 10 years as an entrepreneur, but it will be almost 5 years full time in 2026. And I have to think about my next steps. But the last few years, I've done a lot of traveling. So I've been back and forth in Berlin, which is in Germany. I haven't made the full-time move there yet, but I do a lot of work in Germany. I tested out living in South Africa. That was not for me, but that's another podcast for another day. But I also went to Cannes. I went to Dubai. I spent some time in Greece. I also went to Paris. I went to Ireland for the first time as well, and just so many other places. So I really enjoyed doing a lot of travel. But that's enough of my updates. Let's get into this week's episode. So as a reminder, each Monday, I'll pick 3 topics from the past week that I feel we need to have in our minds for the week ahead. But a disclaimer. I'm giving my opinions. So I discuss market and financial trends and stocks. I'm not a financial advisor, so please do not take any advice from me. This is just me giving my opinion. If you want advice, just make sure you speak to a regulated financial professional. Okay, so first up in karma news, according to the Morning Brew, Tesla is riding the struggle bus, people. So Tesla reported Q1 earnings last week and they were terrible, okay? Their net income dropped 71%. Their revenue fell 20%, and that was worse than what was estimated. And the company has paused its 2025 guidance amid a storm of challenges. So they've got competition from China, where they're now building your dream cars. So you can build your own dream car, and that market is growing. And also other electric car makers are coming up. They've got supply chain issues and also backlash against their CEO, Elon Musk, for his racist views. They said that the Trump tariffs won't affect Tesla as hard as other US car makers, but the company did say that the trade policies will have an impact on demand. Now, on a call with investors, Elon Musk promised that starting from next month, his time allocation to Doge will drop significantly and he will devote more of his time to Tesla. So Elon Musk he's got like a second role. Doge is the US government's Department of Efficiency, and Elon Musk has been all up in their business and he's kept his eyes off the ball of Tesla. Now, my thoughts are, simply put, it is showing that racism does not sell. And I was thinking, okay, can he be ousted or fired as CEO? So when I looked at it, Elon Musk owns 12.79% of Tesla. So he's got a small stake, so he does have some influence. So he could actually get fired. So Tesla shareholders can't actually vote to remove him as CEO, but they can influence the board to remove him from Tesla. So it could actually affect his job. I mean, I looked at X. So Elon Musk owns X, which was formerly Twitter, and X has also declined in profits massively and their valuation since Elon Musk took over. So revenue in the UK dropped by 66.3%, right? And their pre-tax profit decreased by 74%. So the company's overall value has also plummeted, and some estimates are suggesting a decline of over 75% compared to the original share price before. So it really does go to show that, when you are a racist CEO, that can really affect your bottom line. A lot of people have been going back and forth about, in terms of diversity and inclusion, will it have an impact on businesses? This shows that if you are racist, if you're sexist, if you promote misogyny, if you're just a nasty down low person, and you own a big company, especially as CEO, it will impact your business. So even in the US, I'm not sure if you are aware, but Target, after Donald Trump just went for diversity and inclusion in terms of businesses in the US especially, but globally, he was starting to attack what they were doing around promoting a diverse and equitable and inclusive workforce. So off the back of Donald Trump going for companies, and he was trying to say to companies that we should abolish DEI, some companies thought, okay, great, this is a perfect excuse for us just to show how we don't care about DEI. And Target was one of them. So there were some boycotts that were started in the US. It was started by Pastor Jamal Bryant, who's a preacher in America. And due to the boycotts that are still taking place, Target has reportedly lost over $12.4 billion in revenue. And these boycotts, I think, have only just been happening in about a month, and they've lost billions, right? No one seems to be shopping at Target anymore because of this. So their footfall has decreased on average of 6.2% over the past 8 weeks. And that's according to Forbes. So no matter what some, not all, white men may think, disbanding diversity and inclusion does have an effect on profit. So the gaslighting has to stop. So what does this mean for us in terms of going back to what's happening with Tesla and that drama? And I remember actually there was one pretty famous UK broadcaster who he went on social media and he said that he had been saving up money for a deposit to get a mortgage in the UK. And this was a couple of years ago. He decided to put all of his money into Tesla stocks. So I can only imagine what trauma this guy is going through. And there was a time when Tesla was the up and coming thing. Everyone was talking about buying Tesla stocks. So it means that we'll have to wait and see if Tesla gets rid of Elon Musk. Will that help the Tesla share price increase? Only time will tell. I think what it means also is that there is space for more competition in the electric cars space. So for us as consumers, it could actually be cheaper, especially in the EU or outside of the US, anywhere outside of the US, in terms of buying cars. We could buy cheaper cars from China because the EU, and especially the UK, we don't have those terrible tariffs. However, if you are based in the US, I feel for you because many people do not want to buy a car from a racist. Therefore, you have an option of buying from China. But with the tariffs, it means that it could cost you more to get an electric vehicle. So it's something to think about. Okay, so to my next story, tech companies are turning their backs on Gen Z. So first-time jobs for college graduates are becoming more rare. So open roles for entry-level software engineers in particular have dropped. So this is according to the Business Insider, who released a report. And they're saying that a lot of big tech companies are now focusing on using AI and how that can make their workers more efficient. So the number of entry-level management, consulting and finance jobs began declining last year. And several big firms have considered offering lower salaries to graduates. So this kind of shows, could AI be taking some of the entry-level jobs? And that's not Gen Z's only problem. With the economy, a lot of employees are really worried about their jobs. So that means that there were fewer roles opening up. And also employers have been very skeptical about bringing on new hires who need a lot of training straight after university. So all of these changes have left many Generation Z or Zoomers, as we like to call them, very nervous. There was a survey of college seniors in the US from the career site Handshake. It said 62% of them were worried about AI tools growing that could affect their job prospects. So that's actually increased. In 2023, that was 44% were worried. And computer science students are really worried about their overall job prospects. And 28% said that they were not feeling optimistic about their careers in the current economy. And then if you look into this research even further, Handshake has had an increase in the number of job applications on their site, but job postings on the site have also declined. So less companies are actually hiring. Indeed has said that internship roles have actually also fallen to 2019 levels. So I think a lot of Gen Zers are really concerned about whether having a college degree is valuable. Half are saying they feel that now getting a degree is a waste of money. And they're really concerned around being unemployed. And this is just so sad. Really, 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 really sad. So overall, the Business Insider is saying that it's looking very peak for Gen Z. And I've seen this. So I have worked with Generation Z since 2008. So I've delivered a lot of mentoring programs where we work closely with female students who are at university. So we have delivered lots of mentoring programs in terms of helping get women jobs in tech at entry level. And we worked with companies like BT, Vodafone, Virgin Media O2. We've worked with Snapchat and Amazon. So we've actually helped them recruit female students who are actually working at these companies. I have to say though, right, that I have seen how challenging it can be to work with Generation Z. Generation Z do get it quite hard though. They do get called lazy, which I think can be a little bit unfair, but though I have seen it on both sides. So for example, we are starting to move away as an organization. Well, both of my companies, actually, we're moving away from delivering programs that focus on supporting Gen Z. And also with the events that we run, we are not necessarily targeting Gen Z. So they are welcome. It's so hard. I mean, when we deliver our mentoring programs, the amount of times that you have to almost beg them to show up to their mentoring sessions, right? And I know I'm speaking generally, it's not everyone on our mentoring program who we have to beg, but we do have a significant proportion where we have to send them reminders to show up for their mentoring sessions. And this is free. So all of our programs are free for Gen Z. And it's like, you're getting a mentor for free, and I have to remind you. Some of them won't show up. After a couple of months, they'll drop out. We've seen this with our summits, that there will be a free event for them, free food, a marketplace for them to meet graduate employers, and they can't be asked to travel across the other side of town to attend, or they can't be asked to come again. So I see where both sides are coming from in terms of maybe some of the bad feedback, maybe that businesses are hearing, maybe about graduates. Are employers pushing back maybe because maybe they've gone out to career events and they're seeing that Generation Z aren't showing up, or if they show up, maybe they're not as engaged. Who knows? I think in this economy, they may see Generation Z, and I'm just guessing here, as maybe a waste of investment. I know it's not all, but I think it's about perception. And also, if we think about it, a few years ago, the top job that Generation Z wanted was a software engineer. And then we had this surge of coding boot camps, teaching young girls how to code, for example. But now tech companies are scaling back on product development. So you've got all of these young people who were encouraged to learn how to code a few years ago are now without work prospects. And I think tech, especially as a sector, it has ebbs and flows. So 1 minute it's booming, the next it's not. If you look at the kind of like graphs when you look at mobile businesses, so these are like telecoms and mobile businesses like the network. So if you're in Africa, MTN, if you're in the US, Verizon or T-Mobile, and if you're in the UK and EU, Telefonica, Vodafone, so that, telecoms industries, right? It had a really big boom when we all had mobile phones and we were all, texting and calling. I remember my T-Mobile, like the 5-day pass, right? And then it kind of went up and then it went down, right? So now, or actually a few years ago, they were now having to compete with the likes of these kind of like social media apps like Meta and Snapchat. So I feel like the social media apps or the kind of the booming tech companies, so the Googles, Facebooks and Apples, they've gone like up, 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 and they're going on their down, but it's up and down. And so I feel like they're making permanent decisions on temporary market trends. And I think they have to be very, 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 very careful about this, because the majority of the workforce will be Generation Z by 2030. And the creator economy is booming. So I'm thinking, what if this is the new tech, right? What if Generation Z, they're making millions now from being content creators? How are you going to afford to get them to now move from there to work with you? So I think businesses really need to get very creative about how they tap into Gen Z talent, because if you just drop them like a hot rash right now, it's going to cost you more when in a few years' time, business is booming and they've found other industries like the creative economy or maybe setting up their own businesses. And then you've now got to work harder to sell the idea that they should work for you. So my next and final story comes from the Financial Times, which has shared last week, UK borrowing has soared and business activity has contracted at the fastest rate for 2 years. So last week, it was reported that the UK government suffered a double economic blow last week. So annual public borrowing came in at almost £15 billion more than expected. And then the private sector activity contracted at the fastest pace in more than 2 years. So essentially what that means is that the UK government, she's a broke girl, basically. She's not making any money, right? And she's in debt. She's borrowing money, okay? Borrowing more money than she is making. Now, I'm going to touch on how that's going to affect all of us, right? So the borrowing figures, they've now put pressure on the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, to possibly raise taxes in her autumn budget to balance the books. And the data is called the PMI data. It came out last week. And this is a measure of the health of the private sector. It showed that businesses are struggling. I mean, I was talking to you about this earlier. It's a really tough time. So the shortfall between government income and spending was 151.9 billion in the last 12 months up until March, and an overshot of more than 10% on the 137.3 billion that was forecasted just a month ago. Whew, that is a lot, okay? And the Trump tariffs have made a income tax increase more likely, right? So my thoughts are that when Rachel Reeves gave her budget a couple of months ago, she didn't leave any wriggle room. So if you can just imagine, when you budget monthly, so I budget my monthly expenses every month down to how much I'm going to pay for my hair, nails, bills coming out, everything, right? But I always leave a bit of wriggle room. So whether that's just, 10% just in case something comes up, like my boiler might break down or something could break in my house. I think if you budget, you should always have some leeway. My girl Rachel said bun that. She left no leeway. She spent every coin she could get. The risk of that was that if there was a rainy day that we needed as a country, or if something economical came up, she would be screwed. And that came in the form of DT, Donald Trump, and his dumb tariffs. So he has put tariffs for UK imports into the US. And that's really affected car makers like Land Rover and other producers that export and import to the US. So because of that already, if it does have an impact on how well businesses do, so we heard that the business sector or the private sector is actually shrinking, then this could mean that we're not feeding into the economy, which means that she might have to increase income taxes. And I just think what it does mean is, we're going through it a lot in this country. The cost of living is high. Inflation is at 2.6%. And when you think about disposable income, many people don't have that. Some people only have maybe even like 10% or none. And when you think about living costs, so living costs in terms of like how much your mortgage costs, for example, and your bills, it should be, maximum, they say 30%. It's about 50% or more for some people. I don't understand. I don't know. And I can't actually imagine how people are surviving. I feel like since COVID for the past 5 years, especially the UK is just a broke girl and just miserable. We have been broke for 5 years. I personally, I'm fed up of living with this broke girl. It is taxing, emotionally. And it just seems like there's no way out, right? How are people going to survive if in the autumn, Rachel Reeves now says she's coming for our taxes? And if you live in London, I live in London, it's absolute hell. I was on my way to the studio in an Uber, and where my Uber driver was picking me up from, it was a camera. So if you drive into that road, you will get a fine. And he was so vexed. He was like, I hate this country. Every time you drive, there's a fine. You drive into a road, there's a fine. And then in London, we've got the Blackwall Tunnel, where they now introduced a charge for using a tunnel. Yeah. And then they've now opened another tunnel, the Silvertown Tunnel, and you've got to pay to use that. You also have to pay congestion charge to get into London. It's just fine after fine after fine. ULEZ, if you have a diesel car driving into London, you're going to get fined. So this is just, I don't know if anyone can relate, but I'm tired as hell. So this is going to impact those who are on living wage or on low income. I think she will raise income tax, but I think she might try and hit the high earners. But this is where I think Labour gets it a bit wrong. What do you classify as a high earner? Okay. Because if you're talking about 50K, the way that inflation is going up, that's not what I would consider a high earner. So currently, if you earn, I think over 50K or 150K or between that band, you're already taxed almost half of your salary. Okay. And then if you're a business, we've already been hit with an increase in employers' national insurance contributions and corporation tax, which is now at 25%. So the UK is a hot mess. So what can you do? Okay. I have recently met with a financial advisor, and I think it's really important. We need to get our finances in order. And for me, what I want to do is I am focusing on trying my best to invest and think about my savings and really making sound choices. Especially, I'm thinking about my pension, I'm thinking about my stocks and shares, and I want to double down because I can't be relying on this economy. I'm thinking about retirement. And for me, I've got a plan where if I am able to execute my plan, I will be in a really good position financially to retire by 57. So my advice to you is, if you can't meet with a financial advisor, you know what, some of them are free. You can get a free consultation. I'm not trying to sort of show you to be dodgy or anything, but you can get a little free consultation. But I also use apps like Moneybox. So Moneybox is an app where you can invest in your pension and you can invest in stocks and shares and choose different stocks to invest in, or you can get what we call an ETF, which can basically track certain index funds. So the index fund that I track, ironically, is the S&P 500, which tracks the top 500 companies in the US. And it has its ebbs and flows as well. But again, that's just me. Get financial advice, okay? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying speak to someone and think about where you're putting your money. I kind of sense that I had a gut feeling that this year I had to hold on to my coins. So last year I leased a car. So I don't believe in buying cars outright. I think it's best to lease it. However, I was looking at my spending and I thought, you know what? I spent a lot of money on lease and I had my dream car. It was beautiful. I got it custom made and I had it custom made when I was like working in the financial services. So I was a city girl and I had my side hustle. So things were okay. And living in London, I realized I don't really need a car. And so I thought when my lease was up, so when your lease comes up, you can either buy the car outright or you can lease another car. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to end the lease. I'm not going to buy this car outright. I'm going to just Uber it, get the train, and really just think about only essential expenses. So I would think about cutting back on spending. So thinking about what you're spending and focus on just what you can save, right? And I've also been doing just a little bit of updates to my flat as I really want to, in the future, start to rent it out and I want to buy a second property. I also have been looking at my runway. So I have a business and what I've done is I've sort of mapped out in terms of what are critical roles, and that's not a very nice thing to think about, but you've really got to be quite lean. I think in the next 12 months, I've been identifying, okay, what is critical to the business and what roles can we pause? And then I've worked out that I've got 14 months of business and personal runway, but I'm trying to sort of squeeze that down into 12 months just so that I can have that buffer. So I think it's important that you obviously enjoy your life and do the things that you want to do. But I think it's really important to watch your spend. Sadly, it is another year of survival for all of us, but we are in this together, okay? So I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Time has just flown by, and thanks for joining me for the first episode of the Vanessa Podcast. If you learned anything from this episode, please do share this with someone who may find it helpful. And don't forget to like us on YouTube and subscribe. Please leave me a comment on YouTube as well and on all podcast platforms, and just comment what you have learned during this episode. And please make sure as well, this is my last beg, right? Leave me a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. It really helps other people like yourself find the show. And make sure you're following us on Instagram. So we are at the Vanessa Podcast. So until next time.